Welcome to World Transits Today. Happy New Year, everybody. It's 2025. I'm Art Granoff. Connect with me at referenceastrology.com. And today, I'm going to show the January 2025 World Transits in archetypal astrology. And before that, I'm going to briefly explain about archetypal astrology. Here's Stan Grof's map of the psyche. I'll read it for you. We start with ego consciousness, regular thinking consciousness up here. Then we go to our unconscious, our memories, stuff in our memory banks. Then, if we take psychedelics or breath work or deep meditation, we may slip into the perinatal realm, perinatal domain, with BPM 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that equals what Stan calls the 4 basic perinatal matrices, or stages of birth. The first stage, the amniotic universe, everything seems to be okay. The second stage, the cosmic oppression, things are not okay. Stuck in the birth canal, hard to get out of there. And BPM 3, the death rebirth struggle, lots of intensity, trying to get out of there. And 4, BPM 4, the 4th matrix, we made it, victory. And in the 1970s, when Rick Tarnas came along, Rick was writing a dissertation for his PhD on psychedelic psychotherapy, and Stan was on his dissertation committee. So Rick found out that the 4 outer planets in astrology match the phenomenology exactly of the 4 basic perinatal matrices. And here they are. The first matrix, the amniotic universe, matches all the themes of Neptune: mystical union, undifferentiated consciousness, no boundaries, just like Neptune. And then Saturn, the cosmic oppression, stuck in the birth canal, restricted, can't move, can't breathe, frustration, commonly known in astrology as Saturn. And the third matrix, BPM 3, the struggle, the death rebirth struggle, trying to get out, intensity, Pluto. And then BPM 4, death rebirth experience, we're out, freedom, sudden change, matched Uranus. So Rick showed these to Stan, and Stan, with his mouth open, said, I think you got something here. And they kept going. So, map of the psyche, regular consciousness, take some psychedelics, basic perinatal matrices, adding the planetary archetypes. What we do with those is we use what's known as 3 forms of correspondence. We take that information and we look at the birth chart, our individual birth chart, which is the sky, how's it looked when we were born at that moment. Then we look at the world transits, which is the sky of today, showing us the movement of the planets today. And then we combine them. We take the birth chart and the world transits to get our personal transits. Gives us our personal information of what's up for us at certain times. So with all that background, here we are, January 1st, 2025, the world transits of today. And we notice, just as an example, we've got the planet Mars right there, opposite the planet Pluto, and they're both at 1 degrees. So that means they're an exact pair. It's pretty exciting. Mars is the planet of force, of action, and Pluto is the planet of fire and power. So if you get force and action and fire and power, what do you think we get? Okay. You could use force and power to do great things, to accomplish great things, or you can use force, fire and power, the way they're usually used, is for destruction, for chaos. Look at the world today. We've got two big wars. We've got a new president coming in. Mars opposite Pluto. Also with the moon there. Moon, Mars. The moon would be our sensitivity, our softness. With Mars, could be a little tough on the emotions. Moon with Pluto could be deep catharsis, deep emotional catharsis, or it could be the screaming baby. So to start off, 2025, January 1st, we've got a moon, Mars, and Pluto opposition. Pretty strong. We have some major transits going on, major world transits. That's when two planets get together for a while, and the outer planets move very slowly. So when they get together, they stick around a while. As an example, we have the planet Uranus and Pluto right there in this long transit. Uranus trine Pluto goes from 2022 to 2032. And that's a long transit. What are we talking about here? We see planet Uranus, BPM4, sudden change and freedom. And we look at BPM3, Pluto, intensity. So one could say that Uranus with Pluto could be freedom with intensity. A lot of freedom and a lot of intensity. Reminiscent of the 1960s, see 1960, 61 to 1971, 72, we had a Uranus conjunct Pluto in the sky, commonly known as the 60s. Okay, we've had a lot of freedom. The world went upside down in the 60s. Look at what men and women look like. Look at the world. Pretty intense. If you add the planet Saturn, you can see that right in the middle of the Uranus and Pluto conjunction for 10 years, we had Saturn opposite Uranus, okay, lots of freedom. And then we had Saturn opposite Pluto. We had the Vietnam War and race riots. So pretty intense time, 1960s. We also have Saturn conjunct Neptune. Saturn, BPM2, and Neptune, BPM1. So if we look, Saturn restricts and Neptune dissolves. So they're opposites. If we look now, we see that for the next, well, at least through 2027, we've got the four outer planets, right? Neptune, Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto, all in alignment, very tight this year, bringing us undifferentiated consciousness, bringing us frustration, bringing us intensity, and bringing us freedom. Not bad, huh? Let's look at William Blake. He has Uranus square Pluto, freedom with intensity, and he's also got Saturn opposite Neptune, either restricted and confused, or he's able to actualize his dreams. William Blake, his famous poem, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. I'm going to read a little of it for you. And he says, the ancient poets animated all sensible objects with gods or geniuses, calling them by the names and adorning them with the properties of woods, rivers, mountains, lakes, cities, nations, and whatever their enlarged and numerous senses could perceive. And particularly, they studied the genius of each city and country, placing it under its mental deity, till a system was formed, which took advantage of and enslaved the vulgar, by attempting to realize or abstract the mental deities from their objects. Thus began priesthood, choosing forms of worship from poetic tales, and at length they pronounced that the gods had ordered such things. Thus men forgot that all deities reside in the human breast. And the road to excess leads to the palace of wisdom. William Blake. Thank you. And also, with Uranus trine Pluto in his chart, Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, who just died the other day, he was a controversial figure in his time. He came in just after Nixon, 86, the White House, and Gerald Ford took over as a placeholder for a few years. And then Carter won the next election. He tried to do some good stuff, but he was thwarted everywhere he went. Uranus trine Pluto. Also, while I was researching this, I found an interesting picture in the White House in the 70s of Joe Biden shaking hands with Jimmy Carter. And look, turns out they were good friends. There you go. There he was, Biden in the White House almost 50 years ago. Amazing. Let's talk about the inner planets this month, shall we? There's the sun transits. Notice the beginning of the year. Sun with Saturn, Sun with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Hey, it's the sun with the ambassadors to the universe all month. Sun Saturn restricts BPM2, or Saturn is strength. So identifying with strength or identifying with restriction, what's it going to be? You've got the sun with Uranus, okay? Reach for the sun, the new thing, what's new, what's fresh, identifying with what's fresh. Or in the shadow, it could be, or you could be too fresh and too free. And so you're kind of aloof and no one can relate to you. So we've got the sun sextile Neptune, identifying with imagination. Let your imagination go. This is the time for it. Be free. Imagine whatever you wish. We have the sun conjunct Pluto, mid-month till the end. Sun identity. Pluto is fire and power. The fire that bubbles up from within you, okay? That as it bubbles up, you can either direct it, okay, towards some positive use, some artistic use, some endeavor that you are really charged up about. Or if you can't do that, usually what happens is Pluto bubbles up really quick and then blows up and fire shoots out all over the place. So if your sun Pluto, you can either identify with channeling that energy and doing something creative with it, or it'll just burn you up, man, and you'll be nuts, yelling, screaming, dominating, all the kind of stuff you don't want to be doing or you don't want to see other people doing. Sun Pluto. And then towards the end of the month, Sun with Jupiter. Jupiter is gracious, is good fortune, and expands. So it's a great time to expand. Also, with these sun transits, you could look at some of the pairs like we did before. The outer planet pairs, you notice, if we have the sun with Saturn and the sun with Uranus, but they're together. If you notice, sun with Saturn till about the 16th, and sun Uranus starts about the 4th. So for close to 2 weeks, the early part of the month, we're going to have a sun Saturn Uranus going on, okay? Identifying with the new thing, identifying with what was tradition. But sometimes you want to run away from what is traditional and run towards what's new. Yet sometimes you want to retain some qualities from that and run towards what's new. And sometimes the new thing is just too much. You don't want to go near it. So you want to stay put. thus Sun, Saturn, Uranus. Okay. Let's add the planet Mars right there. And we notice, besides the sun with the three outer planets all month, looky here. We've got Mars, Uranus. Mars is force, action, taking what you want. Okay. That's, I guess the taking would be the more instinctive Mars, where it just, yeah, I want, I take. Whereas if you do some work, some inner work, and you work on it a while, Mars can not just be taking, but Mars can be giving. Mars is your will that you can give and help out with as well. So Mars with Uranus. Uranus again, the new thing, BPM4. Mars Uranus. What are you charged up about? What's new for you? Where's that wind blowing through your sails? Do that. Mars Uranus. Mars and Neptune, moving towards wholeness or bold flow. Mars is bold and Neptune's a flow. Okay. What do you do? How do you flow? How do you move towards wholeness? Do it. And Mars Pluto that I just mentioned previously could be really tough. People really flip over this, Mars and Pluto. It's very strong. Look at the wars. Look at, Netanyahu. Look at Biden. Look at Putin. Look at Blinken. They all have Mars with Pluto, and it looks like it's burning them up, burning us up too. So the whole month of January, okay, is very strong with the sun and with Mars and the three outer planets. So I would say, do your work, keep it tight. Don't get all freaked out about stuff. Don't start reacting when crazy stuff happens. And you should be okay. Just keep going. Sun, Mars, Pluto. Go forward. Here's the planet Mercury for January. We notice as well in the second half of January, we have Mercury Uranus, Mercury Neptune, Mercury Pluto. First half, Mercury Neptune. Mercury's the mind, thinking, and Neptune's imagination, flowing. Mercury Neptune, using your mind, using your imagination to go forward. Write a poem, play some music, something like that. Whereas Mercury Neptune is about your mind and imagination, Mercury Saturn is about your mind with practical things, the practical world. Think of Mercury Saturn as a train on a track. You're the train on a track. What might that track be? I don't know. You've got to figure that part out. Okay. Mercury Saturn. And Mercury Uranus, the aha moment, the new thing. Hey. So if it's Mercury Saturn till around the 20th, Mercury Uranus starts about the 18th, about 12 days of Mercury Saturn Uranus. Mercury Saturn, thinking of what was, tradition, what is, law perhaps, and Mercury Uranus. What's the new thing? What's the aha moment? Let's get out of this thing we used to do and go forward. And also Mercury Neptune again, and Mercury Pluto. Mercury Pluto, digging under the surface, finding the prize, reading big books, teaching deep subjects, going deep with your mind under the surface and bringing it back. Kind of like a psychedelic journey, huh? Bringing something back from your journey. We've got also the planet Venus. Same thing. Second half of the month. We got Venus with the three outer planets, okay? And start off with, let's see, Venus Uranus from last month, Fresh Love, the love poem. We've got Venus with Jupiter, expansion of the heart. Okay, just a lot of love. Or with Jupiter, you got to watch out for inflation. Okay, so you get too big. Watch out for that. Venus with Saturn. Venus again, the heart, beauty, love, Aphrodite. And Saturn could restrict that. Or Venus with Saturn can be doing well in love, emotionally secure. The motif is either the couple that's in trouble or the couple standing around the kitchen stirring the shiitake mushrooms together. Okay. And wouldn't you know it, it's Venus Saturn and Venus Uranus, I'd say, for about 2 weeks. The same as with the Sun, Saturn Uranus, and with Mercury, Saturn Uranus. Venus, Saturn, Uranus is, say, Venus, you're in love and you're doing good, everything's fine. Yet there's something at the edge of your eye that's calling you. It says, what about that? Well, sometimes that could be okay, sometimes not. You've got to work that part out. But just the same thing is the Saturn and Uranus pair with our inner planet. In this case, it's with Venus. Okay. And then later, Venus with Neptune, divine love, bhakti, or Neptune can be confusion or delusion. And that can come up in love sometimes. And then Venus, Pluto at the end of the month, beginning of next month. Venus, the heart, Pluto, transformation. So there's the inner planets right there, all matched together. There's our inner planets, the 4 outer planets, all month. On the 13th, January 13th, it's the full moon, sun opposite moon. And on this full moon, it's quite a powerful one, we've also got Mars opposite Pluto. So if you look here, for the full moon on the 13th of the month, we've got the sun and the moon. The sun on the 3 outer planets and the moon on the 3 outer planets. That's really powerful. It's identifying all you got, your identity, and all of your inner stuff, your family and inner feelings, with the 3 outer planets. Very powerful. January 20th, Inauguration Day. The Dark Lord takes over. If you notice, the sun and Pluto opposite Mars. Okay. Sun, Pluto, Mars. If we look at the transit timeline, we see there's the Mars and Pluto transit runs from October through May, okay? And then I included also the Sun and Mars. So if we look here for January, we notice that it's Sun conjunct Mars, Sun opposite Mars and Sun conjunct Pluto with Mars Pluto. Then if we look in March, it's Sun Mars, Sun Pluto, in the middle of Mars Pluto. And then to kick it on, to end it at the end here, it's Sun Mars and Sun Pluto on Mars Pluto. So this is a long Sun Mars Pluto package running through mid-May. Here's Donald Trump's chart. Some love him, some don't. Let's talk about his chart just for a moment or two. One thing that's interesting about him is he has the Sun conjunct Uranus. And he's got the Sun and Uranus trined with Jupiter. The Sun, Jupiter, and Uranus person is very charismatic. Okay. Sun Uranus is up, the new thing. And Sun Jupiter is like wearing the halo. Okay. Expansion of that, of your personality. So Sun Uranus, and in Trump's case, he's highly inflated. So, he's the greatest. And Jupiter expands all that. So he's got that type of personality, which we know about. Okay. Here's an interesting part, though. If you look over here near the top of the chart, you notice Saturn, Venus, Pluto, and Mars. Okay. And if you look a little deeper, okay, because you notice also that with Saturn at 23 and Pluto at 10, it's way too wide for a conjunction. Okay. And we see also that Pluto and Mars here, 16 degrees is way too wide for a conjunction. However, if we look at the midpoint chart right there, we see that between Mars and Saturn, the midpoint is Pluto. Between Mars and Saturn, the midpoint is Pluto. So Trump has a, a Mars Saturn midpoint conjunction with Pluto in the middle. I mean, the three strongest individual intense planets all together in his chart. What did you expect? And here's Trump's transits coming in for January 20th, 2025. One major thing I noticed, he's got Pluto trine to Neptune. Have you had a Pluto-Neptune transit? I just finished one for 7 years. It's really tough. It's really tough. It really dissolves your ego in a lot of ways and makes you deluded in a lot of ways. In psychedelics, it's not too bad because you can really expand and go way deep. But I don't think Trump's taking any psychedelics. So that looks like a tough transit, a lot of frustration for him over the next few years. He's going to be all worked up and he's going to be deluded. We'll have to see what happens with that. Also, he's got a Saturn trine just about coming in, which he's going to have for a year or so. Saturn on top of Saturn. Well, good luck to us with Trump, eh? Here's the United States Pluto return. Okay, it started at 20 degrees in March 2011. The midpoint right now is 2025, and the Pluto return ends at 2034. Also, the United States Uranus return coming in next year, May 2026, and at 10 degrees, and it ends in May 2030 at 10 degrees. And for that time, from 2026 to 2030, look what we have again. Uranus trine Pluto. So it should be a really strong, intense time coming up. I have to say, the next few years should be pretty strong, pretty intense. We've got to find freedom within. That's the way to handle it. It's not react to everything that goes on. Find your freedom within. Do some inner work. So thanks for joining me, everyone. We're transits today, running down the January 2025 transits. I'm Art Granoff. Thanks for joining me.